Today I finished a transplant doing a beard-to-beard transplant. Well, what does that mean? Well, it got me thinking about I should probably do an updated video of my philosophy using FUE, follicular unit excision. That's one of the two harvesting methods. I do both strip and FUE methods, which would be another great video to shoot in the future, and I've done that in the past. But I use FUE technique to harvest beard hairs to put it in the scalp, scalp to the beard, beard to the beard, scalp to the beard, and these are different ways of harvesting and placing. Now, why would I do beard to beard, scalp to beard, beard to scalp? What is the point of all this? And when would I use body hair, or when would I use scalp to body? So this is a confusing thing on the internet. I'm going to try to, as clearly as I can, explain when do I do each of the following, okay? So let's start with what I did today, a beard to beard transplant. Essentially, I'm harvesting beard hairs using FUE and placing them into the beard. Why is that? Well, the hairs underneath their chin, oftentimes people are not as concerned about that area because it's an area that cosmetically is not that important, but this area can be very cosmetically important. So this is a great donor source for beard hairs. What you want to do is make sure that the donor hair matches the recipient hair. Well, there's no better match than a beard to beard because you've got beard hairs looking exactly like beard hairs. So there's a perfect match for those. Beard hairs typically are coarser. They typically are darker, but not always. And some people have white beards and dark scalps. So they typically are growing in usually 1 hairs with occasional 2 hairs, very rarely 3 hairs. So they have a very specific characteristic. So when you take beard hairs and put it into the beard, they work really well. Another great thing with beard hairs as a donor source is that their growth rate is incredibly high. And in addition to that, is an area that rarely leaves hypopigmentation. In other words, loss of color. Like if you look at someone that's had scalp hairs transplanted, they can have little tiny white dots if you shave it very closely. It's very rarely the case. Even when I harvest off Indian, Indo-Pakistani, Asians, and African Americans, they typically heal very well with very little risk of hypopigmentation or skin color loss, especially the way that I harvest it. One thing when you're looking at beard hair harvest, it's technically one of the most challenging types of harvest. Not many people offer that because it's something that requires a lot of skill. I do all of my own FUE harvesting. I don't outsource. I don't have technicians come and do that. I think it's very important for the physician and surgeon to do it both ethically and legally. But what I do with a beard harvest is I really look at the angles of the beard because they all go in different directions. There's different depths. And so it's very tricky. Oftentimes the exit angle looks lower than it is and you have to go higher than what you think. But the beard hairs have really good survival and they have great color match to the beard. When do you think when would I think that a beard to beard wouldn't work? It's really a question of numbers. So not everyone has a massive amount of donor hair to go. So some people that have a small correction in their face, beard to beard's great. Someone that has a robust donor hair down here and have realistic expectations in terms of what I can do for their beard is a great example. But the bad example is someone that wants a full, like lumberjack beard and their donor source is poor. In which case I have to pull from the scalp to the beard. So that's going to bring me to the second idea of when do I do scalp to beard. I do scalp to beard when there's not enough donor for me to do into the face, and they want something much more robust that I simply don't have that available for. And when I take scalp hairs, the level of judgment goes up even higher. Technically, scalp hair is a little bit easier to harvest than the beard, but there are also a lot of issues. For example, if someone just wants a robust beard, but they're miniaturizing and thinning over their whole scalp, that's a problem because if I take those scalp hairs, those scalp hairs may go away. B, if they want to shave their head, there's going to be white dots back there. It's not scarless despite what you see on online marketing. And so I've got to make sure that donor is good. Also, scalp hairs have an issue with it. They may not match color, pores, I'm sorry, not pores, colors, caliber, they may not match exactly. So you're putting, let's say, this reddish color fine hair into an area that's dark brown, that's thick in caliber, it's not going to work. So you've got to make sure that there's a good match. What is there a benefit to scalp hairs is that they're much more plentiful oftentimes in beard hairs, so there's a larger, more robust resource, and that I can take from a strip or a FUE, depending on how we want to go, but this video is talking more about FUE, but it can be done either way. You don't want to make a strip here because you're going to have a scar. Back here, that strip is based on some judgment, and I create very good scars back there that are very hard to find. But another benefit of taking scalp hairs over beard hairs is scalp hairs have more 2 hair, 3 hair, 4 hair follicular units. A follicular unit, in case that's confusing, is that hairs in the back of the scalp grow in clusters of distinct 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. When we're looking at the follicular units of a beard, they're mainly 1s and 2s, mainly 1s with some 2s, rarely 3s. Whereas the scalp hairs, usually they're either 2s or 3s. Asians have more 2s and African Americans have more 2s. Caucasians or white-skinned people oftentimes have more 3s, not always. Sometimes they have more 2s, it just depends. But having a 2 or 3 hair graft would give you more robust density if the caliber matches well. Is that safe? Because the natural question is, if beard hairs naturally grow in 1s and 2s, if I'm taking 2s and 3s, would they look right? And the answer is absolutely yes in the right hands. I feel very confident to use 2s and sometimes 3s without having to separate them for better survival in the beard for better results. But it doesn't always work if the caliber is very coarse and the beard hair is very fine, for example, the opposite of what we would think, and a lot of other factors, then I may not do that. But oftentimes a 2 or 3 hair, even though it doesn't exactly exist in nature, does well in terms of using scalp hairs into the beard, so long as those caliber and curl does match and everything works. Now, the question is, when do I do beard to scalp? So we talked about beard to beard, scalp to beard. Now we're talking about beard to scalp. So usually the beard to scalp, it's my salvage. So I don't typically use beard in the scalp unless I need to, okay? So what are some examples? So for example, a gentleman that is from another state, he has really bad strip scar issues. I did not cause that, but he needs to have that fixed. I could use his scalp hairs, but he's already had a diminished scalp usability in that area, and he's got a very robust beard for me to harvest. With this is also because he's got bad scars. I don't want to take a donor strip and place in there because it may be worse. So in his situation, if I had to, I may have to shave the backside of his scalp, which he doesn't want to do. I don't want to take more donor from the scalp. So his beard hairs provide a workaround on all of these situations. One is he doesn't have to shave the back of his head. 2 is I don't have to deplete any more of his donor hairs in the scalp that for his scalp. To transplant to his scalp. In other words, I don't want to use scalp for scalp. I rather use beard. He's got plentiful beard. His beard to scalp ratio and caliber matches relatively well. You don't have to have as much of a perfect match, because when you're looking at the beard area, if their beard's a little bit coarser, a little bit darker, if it's just to mask a scar, it usually does okay. Now, of course, if you've got blonde scalp here, fine hairs, you got this coarse, dark brown hair, it's not going to look right. So that's a judgment call. If there's a slight mismatch of the two, I feel much more confident go up here to here than the other way around. But this is all judgment. I mean, you may hear this video and go, wow, when you walk in for a consult, I'm going to look and give you something opposite. It's only because when I look, I'm putting all these pieces together with over 20 years of experience to make that judgment call for you. So in short, beard to scalp is typically my go-to when I'm dealing with a salvage situation. Great example, sometimes I look and I do what's called bitemporal strips. So in other words, I take 2 small strips instead of FUE, and I use beard FUE to salvage a situation. I just did that for a gentleman 6 weeks ago. I hope I never have to use your beard hair to fix the scalp hairs, because that is a last resort where I'm trying to do everything I can not to use scalp hairs. But beard hairs work well. What are some negatives with beard hair into the scalp? I already mentioned a few: caliber and curl. If they don't match, or color, if they don't match well, that's a problem. The other negative in terms of getting visual density, especially into a scar, because you want to have as much density to match the follicular units back here, is the problem I've already mentioned before, is that beard hairs typically grow in 1s and occasionally 2s, and if I'm trying to get density, I need 2s and 3s and maybe 4s, but I won't have that because they're beard hairs. So that's a slight negative with beard to scalp. Body hair, to understand this, is there's a big fanaticism with ideas of using body hair. Body hairs are not fantastic. There are a lot of issues with using body hair from body to scalp or body to beard. First is caliber match. The body hairs are very oftentimes not as coarse as a beard. They don't match as well. They're sometimes a little finer, but there's been evidence that after about a year or so, as there can be what's called recipient dominance, which is something I lectured on in India in 2020, right before the pandemic fully struck, which is the idea is that even though the caliber doesn't match, there can be some changes to the anatomy to the hair after about a year. I cannot guarantee that. But that's not the issue in terms of, that's a benefit. The drawback is that the chest hairs have several drawbacks. The first of all, it leads hypopigmented scars. So you have white dots all over your chest, very hard to cover that. Of course, if you've got a horrible scalp and you can wear a shirt and not worry about covering it, that's okay. But the reverse of that is the fact that these body hairs don't survive well long term and they don't provide much density. So it's not one of the things I really like to do. I don't. It's a total last resort if I absolutely have to go to, but it's one of those things that in any circumstance, I would like to avoid body hair because they don't work well. They lead to scars. They don't provide enough visual density, and oftentimes, even after 6 to 8 years, there's a diminishment of the body hairs growing in the scalp, so they don't have long-term survivability. Why would I bother to do it then? Because if that's all I've got, and I've got to fix a disaster on the scalp, then that has to be the case, and I've got to use it. But it's for all those reasons, I don't prefer to use it. It's absolutely something I don't like to use if I can absolutely avoid it. Now, how about scalp to body? Yeah, that works. I mean, if you understand that I could do that, in which case I probably would recommend a strip over FUE because FUE takes the donor bank a little faster, but we don't have to. We could do FUE. But remember what I said, whenever I take scalp hairs, it's not scarless, no matter if you do FUE or strip. And when I take that donor bank away from you and try to put it into your chest, I won't have those scalp hairs to be used in your scalp, and you won't be able to shave your head if I want to. So I rarely like to try to take that precious commodity of scalp hair and move it over to the donor. Especially nowadays, I think people are looking at even shaving chest and doing electrolysis to get rid of chest hairs. I think it's a precious commodity to use in the chest if I can avoid it. So this is a quick video to understand when I do beard to beard, beard to scalp, scalp to beard, and beard to chest to scalp, scalp to chest, and have you understand a little bit more about it.